Shein offers cheap products, but it's killing small businesses, threatening people's security, and putting lives at risk. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. High fashion is a world unto itself. Daring, bold, always pushing boundaries, and satanically expensive. I guess that's why the devil wears, well, you know. But with a price tag like this, most people don't have the luxury of buying the kind of high-class, fashionable clothes found at the Met Gala. Apparently the theme this year was furries. In space! Enter fast fashion. It's got most of the style at a fraction of the cost. H&M, Zara, and Fashion Nova are some well-known and well-established fast fashion companies, but all of them are losing their edge to a relative newcomer called Shein, also known as the TikTok of e-commerce. Shein is an e-commerce clothing retailer. It has no physical stores, and partially because of that, it's a bit mysterious. If you haven't heard of Shein, don't feel bad. A lot of people haven't heard of Shein. And yet it's somehow simultaneously widely popular. Shein is so popular that it was ranked as the #1 shopping app by Business of Apps in 2022, beating the likes of Amazon and Nike. And it was the #1 fashion website on SimilarWeb earlier this month. Even I've been targeted by their ad campaign, and I'm pretty sure I'm not their target demographic. Shein exports to customers in more than 220 countries. And according to the UK financial website Money, based on the number of Google searches received, it's the most popular fashion brand in 113 of them. Even the US is gobbling up Shein's products. According to Bloomberg, by November 2022, Shein made up half of all fast fashion sales in the US. It's now America's 4th most downloaded app, period. Behind only TikTok, Instagram, and Mustap, the app that puts mustaches on everything you take pictures of. Okay, that's not America's most downloaded app, but it should be. With all that popularity comes money. Shein was at one point valued at over $100 billion in 2022. More than Zara's owner Inditex and H&M combined, though now it's valued at only around $64 billion. Thanks to the pandemic and digital marketing, as well as its grossly cheap prices, Shein became the most talked about brand on YouTube and TikTok in 2020, which has to be eating Walmart alive. Hey, we're grossly cheap too. Emphasis on gross. All of this has led some to say that Shein is the future of fast fashion, but they're also wondering if that's a good thing. Spoiler alert, it's not. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. Online clothing retailer Shein has become incredibly popular throughout the world, which isn't great for a lot of reasons. One reason is where the company is based. You guessed it, China. Although it took a while for that to become public knowledge, Shein has a history of being very secretive about its origins. So secretive that in this 2017 archived About page, you can see that the company claimed to have started as a small group of passionate, fashion-loving individuals in New Jersey in 2008. The page has now been removed. Man, you know China is bad when they list New Jersey as a better alternative. But things have changed. In 2021, Shein admitted to the Wall Street Journal that they have offices in Guangzhou and Singapore, and that they are backed by investors at Sequoia Capital China. Forbes' Shein company webpage has them headquartered in Nanjing, China. Still, Shein downplays its connection to China. Whenever it does mention China, it'll pass it off as one of many different regions around the world that sources the company's products, without sharing metrics. Considering how many Chinese companies try to downplay their ties to China, I'm starting to think even China knows how bad China is. One online newsletter says that Shein's shipping status updates reportedly use generic terms such as source country and port of departure to avoid referring to Guangzhou or Hong Kong. But all linguistic trickery aside, it's a Chinese company. And as we know, that comes with some serious strings attached. It's also very untransparent, even by Chinese standards. Shein's supply chain is so untransparent that it scored 0 out of 100 in Fashion Revolution's 2022 Fashion Transparency Index's measure of traceability. Again, 0 out of 100. And since China is known for using slave labor, I think we're getting an idea of how everything on Shein can be so cheap. Although Shein keeps information about supply chains hidden, we do know that it reportedly has more than 6,000 suppliers, most in the southern province of Guangdong, the heart of China's manufacturing and export hub. But that still doesn't tell us a lot. And the company isn't about to give anything away. Going through Shein's About Us page, the company says very, very little about itself. What it does say is buried under corporate jargon. We don't even know much about Shein's founder, Xu Yangtian, who also goes by Chris Xu. Good choice for English names, though. There's not much information about him available, and what information there is sometimes conflicts. For example, a Forbes article in 2022 said he was an American-born graduate of Washington University, while this online Chinese media published an article a week later saying he was born in 1984 in Shandong province, China. Either way, the company certainly benefits from its ties to China. The only place that's more secretive about its supply chain is Santa's workshop, and that jolly old tyrant uses elf slave labor. In 2022, Shein's CMO reported that Shein releases 700 to 1,000 new products each day. But by 2022, Fortune magazine reported that Shein posts 6,000 new items on its site a day. Let me repeat, 6,000 a day. Despite making so many new items, the company usually makes only 50 to 100 copies of each item, first to see which ones click with customers most. This pays off in the end because the constant bombardment of new items encourages people to always go back to the Shein app for more. That's part of what makes the app so addictive. According to an analyst at Core Site Research, by refreshing thousands of products daily, Shein has trained customers to visit its platform regularly or risk missing out on the latest designs. How can Shein make so many new items so fast? Are they leasing elves from that monster Santa? Well, part of it is thanks to its in-house software, which has a deep learning AI that can recognize trends across social media platforms. Shein can instantly send the data collected to its suppliers, and from there, it takes no more than 10 days to manufacture and ship items, instead of weeks like its competitors. But here's where Shein starts to get more than just a little bit shady. Surprised? Yeah, I know, neither am I. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. Shein's got a shady background full of holes, but it also has shady practices. Its in-house software allows it to track trends, instantly send the information to its suppliers, and receive products with incredible speed. And suppliers want to work with Shein because money. There's just one catch. All suppliers have to use Shein's software. There's a good bet that means the Chinese government has access to all that data. And that's not all. Shein also has a history of fashion robbery. Stealing in China, name a more iconic duo. Besides human rights abuses in China, and suppression of information in China. Oh, and downplaying ties to China and China. The theft has made designers and brands angry enough to want to wage war against it. One case example is fitness entrepreneur Casey Ho. According to her, Shein copied so much of her design that it even copied the way it was advertised. I sort of see what she means. Some might say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I say the sincerest form of flattery is asking permission and paying royalties. Many other designers and artists all over the world also claim that Shein has been stealing their designs and selling them for a fraction of the cost. Here are just a few examples. Shein responds to complaints by quietly removing items from its listings. Other times, the items in question may just reappear. Shein, of course, claims that it respects intellectual property rights, and that it takes all claims of infringement seriously. Shein's actions, however, say the complete opposite. And they've ended up facing dozens of lawsuits because of it. Design theft aside, there are a ton of other shady things that Shein does. After all, if Shein wants to make more green than this bikini bottom, it's got to do more than just steal ideas. Although if this is one of their original ideas, I see why they steal. This looks like if the Grinch were a bedwetter. In addition to theft, it's also an environmentalist's worst nightmare. We'll forget for a moment that the whole point of fast fashion is to constantly chase ever-changing trends with cheap, quickly replaced, and quickly discarded clothing. Shein, in particular, also uses materials that are not just cheap, but harmful. Given that fabrics make up around 60% of the cost for clothes, it makes sense that Shein resorts to using cheap materials. But they're not just cheap. According to Bloomberg, Shein products contain over 95% new plastic, and they shed microplastics each time they're washed. Microplastics, by the way, have now been found even in the placentas of unborn babies. Wait a minute, microplastics from China are getting into unborn baby placentas? You know what that means. That means they've been part of Chinese territory since ancient times. But it's not just plastic either. The environmentalist group Greenpeace released a study claiming that various hazardous chemicals used in Shein products broke EU regulations. Greenpeace weren't the only ones. In 2021, a CBC marketplace investigation found that 1 in 5 items had elevated levels of chemicals, including lead, that experts found concerning. This included a Shein jacket for toddlers that contained almost 20 times the amount of lead that Health Canada deems safe for children. I'm surprised Shein doesn't brag about this when they're accused of theft. They're totally different. Your skirt is made of safe products. Ours is made from lead. This way, Superman can't see through it. Remember back in 2007 when there was a massive scandal involving lead paint on toys made in China? I guess giving lead poisoning to children still isn't enough of a reason to stop doing business with China. The cost of cheap Shein products isn't just the environment or our physical health either. User data is offered on a silver platter to Shein. Remember when I mentioned how Shein's in-house software uses AI and other advanced technologies to track fashion trends in real time? Well, where do you think it's getting the data? Shein collects data from customers using their social media apps and sites to track their shopping behavior, as well as customize their preferred clothes at lower costs than competitors. Given that every Chinese company is compelled by Chinese law to give the Chinese Communist Party access to data whenever it asks for it, you'd best assume that the CCP can access whatever Shein accesses. You know what app you don't have to worry about that with? Must app. That's why it should be number 1. But it's not just the CCP getting their hands on that data. Criminals can easily access user data as well, as New York discovered after 39 million Shein users had their accounts stolen. This included credit card information and personal information, including names, email addresses, and hashed account passwords. And Shein had the audacity to lie about it, saying that only 6 million consumers were impacted. They were fined $1.9 million, but that's just a slap on the wrist for a multi-billion-dollar company. What wasn't known at the time was that Shein collected a lot more data than just that. Microsoft researchers later discovered that Shein's Android app also read clipboards, meaning that whatever you copied, such as passwords, financial details, or other sensitive information, Shein could see it. Clipboard access is definitely not even remotely necessary for users to use Shein's app. Google and Microsoft confirmed that Shein removed this feature after it was discovered, but who knows what other data collecting mechanisms Shein secretly tries to let slide. Although the same could be said about every Chinese app. Just a reminder, don't use Chinese apps. We also have to talk about labor conditions. There's a lot of documentation of labor abuse, especially in Shein-affiliated factories in Guangzhou. Their labor conditions make Santa's workshop look like the Keebler elves' workshop. They unionize, they have an in-office gym and a PS5 in their break room. In one factory, workers were paid the equivalent of $556 a month to make 500 garments a day. In another factory, workers had no base pay and were instead paid 4 cents a garment. Shein is also facing scrutiny by the US government over the company's alleged forced labor, especially since investigations like Bloomberg's lab tests link Shein's cotton to Xinjiang, the region where Uyghurs are being placed in forced labor camps. Shein denies that it's using forced labor, but given how it has a track of lying about everything, I'd take Shein's word with a grain of salt, in a bucket of salt, with a salt-lined rim like a martini glass. Shein's shady practices deserve consequences, and the first step is to delete it if you're already using it. Support designers and local clothing businesses instead. Protect your own personal information. Don't be complicit in ruining the environment and people's lives. And while not everyone can afford to dress like a furry in space, if you really want grossly cheap prices, there's always Walmart. Ugh. You know Shein is bad when Walmart is the more conscientious option. And if you want more clothes, check out everything in the China Uncensored merch store, guaranteed not made in China. Head over to chinauncensored.tv/merchandise and support the show in style. And buy your very own. I turned a blind eye to ethnic cleansing in China, and all I got was this slightly cheaper t-shirt. The link is below. China Uncensored would not exist without support from viewers like you. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.